To start off our list at number 10, we have the Bunny Man Bridge. In 1904, not far from this bridge, in Fairfax Station, Virginia, was a mental asylum. Nearby residents didn't like the fact that the mental patients were near their new homes, so they had it shut down. While the patients of the asylums were being transported, their bus crashed, and all were found except for one, by the name of Douglas Griffin, who disappeared to the nearby woods. After this disappearance, dead bunnies would be littered all over the forest floors and trees with attempts to consume them. And then finally, on Halloween night, Douglas Griffin struck and killed a group of teenagers that were hanging out near the bridge. He then proceeded to gut and hang all of them as if they were bunnies he had hunted. A police report soon came in about a man in all white with a bunny mask throwing a hatchet at a car, which would eventually give way to this urban legend. Stealing our number 9 spot, we have the Ferry State Plantation House. With 11 spirits calling the Ferry State Plantation House their home, Haunted House seems a fair title for this site. Now used as a museum and educational center, the house also offers Halloween tours called the Stroll of Lost Souls, and is a regular site for ghost hunters and paranormal activity groups. The story goes that this house was used originally as a school, tavern, and eventually a mansion. Once the mansion had burned down in 1828, it was reconstructed by abused and mistreated slaves. The house's many spirits included the woman in white, who fell from the stairs, and the slave named Sally Walk, who is said to be still grieving for her late fiance. But the most famous is Grace Sherwood, who is named the Witch of Pungo. She was in fact the last person convicted of witchcraft in Virginia, having to spend 7 years in jail and later being released. When she had passed away, reports say that her body disappeared without a trace, leaving many people to believe that she was truly a witch. Here at our number 8 spot, we have the ghost of Sarah Henry. Patrick Henry, an American patriot who coined the famous term, "Give me liberty or give me death," lived at Scotchtown with his wife Sarah and their 6 children. Everything was normal and fine until Sarah gave birth to their 6 children. Following that, she would show signs of mental illness, and at this time, mental illness was not a defined term and would often be associated with the devil instead. Henry decided to keep his wife hidden in the basement of his home, hidden from the public to protect his family's image, with people often saying that she was possessed by a demon. As time passed, Sarah would become more violent, eventually having to be in a straitjacket. And after her death in 1775, she was buried in an unmarked grave. It's said to this day, a woman in a long white gown appears in and around the house, just standing there, showing that maybe Sarah was not ready to leave her home, even when her family did. Coming in at number 7, we have the Poorhouse Road Tunnel. This tunnel was built in the early 1900s as part of the railway in Virginia that ran between Staunton and Lexington. It didn't take long for the tunnel to acquire a tragic reputation though. The story goes about 2 young girls playing in a nearby woods when all of a sudden a stranger had approached them, appearing friendly at first, but quickly turned sinister and decided to execute both girls. Now it's said that the voices of these girls cry from the darkness of the tunnel, and once you begin to walk through, you may begin to hear the whispers from the girls. Some other haunted reports include the appearance of handprints on cars, fog appearing in photographs when it is not visible, and the sound of disembodied voices. Guess you can say it's a poor choice to travel to Poorhouse Road. Straight out of a Twilight movie, at number 6 we have the Richmond Vampire. However, this is not your ordinary vampire. The story goes that in 1925, the Churchill train tunnel collapsed with workers still inside. Now, the tragedy of that is very real, but surprisingly in the wreckage, a bloody man appeared with jagged teeth and skin hanging off his bones. Everyone had thought it was just a mere survivor of the incident, but here is where it gets weirder. As they got closer to the man quickly jumped and ran away to the nearby Hollywood cemetery and disappeared into a mausoleum within. They say the vampire still inhabits the cemetery grounds, which has led many satanic and cult groups to visit and attempt to summon the vampire once again. At the middle of our list, we have St. Albans Sanatorium. Before St. Albans was a sanatorium, it was the site of the Draper's Meadow Massacre. Shawnee Indians beheaded, tomahawked, and even bashed in the skulls of the settlers in the 1700s, and took the survivors back with them to their village. Then, during the Civil War, the area was bombarded by artillery during the Battle of Cloyd's Mountain. People claim to see the smoke and hear the sounds of the artillery fire from the Civil War. Once it became a sanatorium, patients suffered inhumane experimental treatments that left some disabled for life due to its controversial treatment and care. The combination of the bloody history of the land along with the misery within the sanatorium created a perfect storm of paranormal activity, which is why St. Albans Sanatorium is considered to be one of the most haunted places in Virginia. Coming in at number 4, we have the Martha Washington Inn. The mansion was built in 1832 and functioned as an all-female college. But when the Civil War was happening, the college was used by the young women to nurse the injured. During this time, there's a story of one of the nurses who played her violin to one of the wounded soldiers. She sat by his bedside all the time, and eventually, they would fall in love. Unfortunately, the soldier succumbed to his injuries and passed away. The nurse was completely devastated upon hearing the news, and in a few weeks, the woman would follow him in death. It was reported that the music of the violin continues to play in the room of the wounded soldier. This site is now a hotel and a spa, but I don't know how relaxed I could be with its dark history of ghosts. With the number 3 spot, we have the lovely Lover's Leap. Before Europeans settled in Virginia, there was a Shawnee brave and a Cherokee girl who met in the forest. There was rising tensions between their two tribes. This was like a version of Romeo and Juliet. These two would meet in secret because of the restrictions placed from each of the tribes. But one day, the man visited the spot where they would always meet, which was situated near Duffield, Virginia, on the scenic cliffs. But this time was different. The woman was on the edge, ready to jump, saying that she wouldn't be able to see each other ever again. With that being said, the man decided that the only way they could be together was to kiss and jump off the cliff together. Now, people who visit the area say that they've seen the shadowy figures of a couple on the edge of the cliff, while some say they feel the strong urge to jump off when they come with their significant other. Taking our number 2 spot, we have the Crawford Road. Crawford Road is one of the most haunted roads in Virginia. One of the stories tells of a group of friends that were cruising late at night until they decided to turn up the fun by going down Crawford Road. While driving down the road, they joked, laughed, and sang songs from their brand new CD. Everything had been fine until they had reached the bridge. The track they were listening to on the CD let out a high-pitched, obnoxious screeching sound. The noise lasted for about 10 seconds until they were far enough from the bridge. Then the noise stopped and the CD played as normal. Another incident involved a wedding that took place in the area. The bride was not a happy one and regretted all of her actions, which led her to hang herself by the bridge. As people drove down this road, they would report seeing this woman in a white wedding gown standing on top of the bridge only to jump off and disappear. Now, taking our top spot in our top 10 scary Virginia urban legends, we have the Battle of Cold Harbor. Said to be one of the most haunted battlefields in the United States, it was here that over 150,000 men fought a long, gruesome war, which claimed the lives of over 15,000 men. As the war finished, it was reported that the lack of medical assistance led to dugouts being crammed with both the living and the dead, and those who passed away couldn't even get proper burials. The conditions of the battlefield made this place a living hell for those who had to fight in it, and now it's reported that those who visit experience paranormal occurrences, such as smelling the distinct scent of burned gunpowder or a fog that would appear and disappear in the area, which could be resembling the thick gun smoke from the past battle. Other reports hear the cries and the screams of the dying soldiers waiting for someone to bury them properly. Restless souls are scattered throughout the park, which is why it makes sense that people get an overwhelming sense of sorrow and fear when they walk on that field. At our number 10 spot, we have the Seven Sisters Road. Located in southeast Nebraska, just outside Nebraska City, is a road that locals call Seven Sisters Road. And if you're trying to find this on a map, it will be named L Street. But I wouldn't recommend taking a road trip down this place. Legend goes that a man had an argument with his parents and his 7 sisters. It got to a point when his whole family hated him and he looked to seek revenge. So one day he waited in the woods outside of his home and waited for his parents to leave. After he forced or baited his sisters one by one outside of the house, he would end up hanging each and every single one of them where this road is situated today. Then eventually a road would be built on this path of the trees, causing them to be shut down. Ever since the construction of the road, this road is said to be haunted by the 7 sisters who were executed. Many who have driven through the area report having problems with their cars stalling, headlights mysteriously dimming, speedometers freezing, and windows that roll up and down seemingly on their own. At our number 9 spot, we have Alliance Theater. On the east side of Nebraska is one of the most iconic buildings in the state, and that is the Alliance Theater. This was built back in 1903, starting off as a hotel, but in 1938, it was then rebranded into Imperial Theater until it switched to the name Alliance. It would host many different performing arts, but it said a few performers passed away inside of the theater. Some were caused by accidents, such as an actress named Mary who passed away after a piece of lighting equipment fell on her. Now, over the years over its existence, many workers at the theater have reported their own ghostly tales. Some include whispers as if someone's right behind them, and shadow figures walking around, and some are even seen performing. Even in 2002, the owner Gerald Bullard had said to reporters that, quote, "If the theater is actually haunted, then the ghosts are very friendly." It still remains open to this day, and many visitors claim to see the spirit of Mary. At our number 8 spot, we have Blackbird Hill. North of Decatur, Nebraska is a hill overlooking the Missouri River, and this hill is said to be infested with spirits. One notorious spirit that most visitors spot is of a young lady who could be screaming near the cliff. Legend goes that in 1840, a young couple in the area fell in love. This relationship carried both of them through school, but soon after they were done, the boy decided to travel abroad. His initial plan was to travel the world, then come back and marry the girl. But after a few months, the man never ended up returning back home. Months turned into years, and eventually the devastated girl gave up and married another man. The new couple then decided to move to a small cabin to what is now Blackbird Hill. And this is when the girl spotted her ex-fiance walking up to the cabin. She was shocked and then confessed a love for the man and went back home to tell her new fiance that she wanted to leave him and have a divorce. The new fiance got very angry and in a rage took her to the nearby cliff and proceeded to jump off together. The ex-fiance arrived, but just too late, only to hear the agonizing scream of his former wife. This occurred on October 17th, and many visitors gather up in this day because it's said that you can still hear her screams down the cliff. At our number 7 spot, we have the Poison Girl at Centennial Hall. Built in 1897 in Valentine, Nebraska, is the historic Centennial Hall. It functions now as a 12-room museum, but before it was originally built to be a high school for the kids in the area. Then in 1947, a young female student was murdered inside of the school. She passed away after playing on her clarinet. This caused everyone to suspect that someone had intentionally poisoned her clarinet reed. Ever since the incident, the school is haunted by this little girl. The teachers will report her in their classrooms after school times, and this would accompany the feeling of dread. Other visitors and students report to hear her clarinet being played in a very ominous way. Now as a museum, visitors still report this little girl roaming the halls. She is said to have tugged on people's clothing, as well as placing her clarinet on many of the artifacts inside of the museum in hopes that someone will play it and be poisoned like she was. At number 6 spot, we have radioactive hornets. Although this theory is debunked, it was a crazy one when it was first released in the media because many people didn't know how radiation worked, and whatever they said about it would just scare you. Story goes that after the nuclear disasters following World War II in the 1940s, Japan's Fukushima nuclear plant created a giant mutant killer hornet due to their exposure to radiation. The hornets were said to have grown 4 times their size and were reproducing exponentially. Then one year in Nebraska, it was reported that many people were passing away with stings and swelling on their bodies, which led many people to place a blame on radioactive hornet. Again, this is just a myth and no radiation didn't cause overgrown killer hornets, but still these large Japanese hornets do exist and they go by the name of Asian giant hornet. At a number 5 spot, we have the Bailey House Museum. This red brick house in Brownsville was built just after the Civil War by Unison officer Captain Benson M. Bailey. He, alongside his wife, lived in this house for many years until financial depression hit, causing them to move away. This relocation would eventually place them in a more dangerous area, leading to their eventual murders. Their murders were never solved, but many claim that it was the fault of a jealous neighbor who poisoned the two in order to get their property. Whatever happened, what is known is that the spirit of Captain Benson Bailey is said to lurk the home to this day. He is said to slam doors open and shut in the house in order to display his dominance, and when he's agitated, he will swing them back and forth until you just stop doing whatever it is that he doesn't like. Others have reported seeing the man himself walking the halls and even standing up against the doors motionlessly. At a number 4 spot, we have Hummel Park. Despite being a beautiful park in appearance, there is a much darker story to it that makes you think twice before stepping foot here. This area is said to be the place where many lynchings, hangings, and satanic rituals were performed, and some believe they are happening to this day deep within the woods of the park. A stairway in the park has been called the Stairs to Hell because it is reported that it's impossible to count the same number of steps ascending the stairs as it is descending the stairs. Other than the fact that this place is covered in satanic graffiti, this place is just one of those places you shouldn't test out. You know? Just in case. At a number 3 spot, we have Walgren Lake Monster. Just west of Nebraska is the Walgren Lake, and this body of water is said to hold a 40 to 100 feet beast. Witnesses have said it looks like an alligator that has 2 front legs and a flipper on its back. Others have said it has a serpentine body, which closely resembles the Loch Ness Monster. But I swear, everyone everywhere believes they have the Loch Ness Monster in the area, or is that just me? It's said that you'll know this monster is near is that when you smell a hard stench of rotting flesh. The first written record of this monster is from a 1922 issue of the Hay Springs News. The following year, a local man named J.A. Johnson described the monster in an interview with the Omaha World Herald. According to the report, Johnson and his 2 friends were camping on the banks of the lake when they noticed a creature about 60 feet away. The men claimed that as soon as the beast saw them, it belted out a huge roar, whipped around, and plunged beneath the muddy lake water. At number 2 spot, we have the Ball Cemetery. Ball Cemetery is a cemetery in Springfield, Nebraska that was first used during the 19th century by pioneers. There is only one way in and one way out, and trespassers have been greeted by a caretaker with a shotgun who lives nearby. But instead of the caretaker keeping people out of his cemetery, it's more like he's trying to stop them from entering a place that is cursed. For decades, it has been said that this dark and lonely plot of land in the middle of nowhere is haunted by mysterious entities that defy rational explanation. Tall male apparitions sometimes attack nighttime visitors, and a female ghost laughs, speaks, and tugs on people's clothing. Photographs taken here often contain anomalies which believers swear are evidence of ghostly presences. All the way at a number 1 spot, we have the Hatchet House. In the town of Portal, there is a 1-room schoolhouse that held a very gruesome murder. Legend says that back in the early 1900s, a teacher snapped at her students after they were misbehaving for hours. She had already been having problems back at home as well, so this was her final straw. Except this would be a little bit too brutal for our liking. She would then proceed to lock the door to the classroom and pull out a rusty hatchet from underneath her desk. From here, she would decapitate every single student in the class, and then she took their heads and placed them on top of each of their desks. And it gets worse, so I apologize. She then carved out their hearts and brought them over to a nearby bridge to throw them down below one by one. At number 10 spot, we have the Phantom Hitchhiker of Black Horse Lake. Near the city of Great Falls in Cascade County is a tale about a very notorious yet mysterious hitchhiker. If you happen to be coming off of Highway 87 going down Fort Benton, you may encounter a man on the side of the road at night. The area is very flat, so the man is very easy to spot when you're driving down this road. But unlike other people on the side of the roads, this person isn't looking to get a ride. Instead, once your car gets closer, the person is reported to roll over the hood of your car, across the windshield of the vehicle, as if they had been struck. As people begin to check on the man after they hit, they realize that they had hit nothing and the person they previously saw just disappeared. Over the years, there have been hundreds of reports that claim the same thing. They drive on this road, then they hit a man, only to find out it was nothing. Many believe this is the spirit of a Native American man who got struck and killed on this road. However, there's still no written document on it. At number 9 spot, we have Sacrifice Cliff. Overlooking Billings, Montana is Sacrifice Cliff. Despite the breathtaking views and scenic paths, this place has a very dark history attached to it. I mean, you probably already know that just by the name alone. Story goes that this cliff was once a peaceful meditation spot for the men of the Crow tribe. When they arrived here, they would be in complete silence, which showed the amount of respect they had for the area. However, a smallpox outbreak hit the area, causing the majority of the Crow tribe to perish within days. So one day, some of the boys returned to their homes from Sacrifice Cliff, only to discover that their entire village, including their family members, had all passed away from smallpox. They were so distraught they didn't see a point in living, so the boys decided to sacrifice themselves over this cliff. They would return back to the cliff with their horses. Then they would proceed to blindfold the horse and then ride off these very cliffs to their deaths. Although this is a very sad tale, if you decide to visit this place at night, you may hear the sound of these horses as if they're falling from the cliff to this day. At number 8 spot, we have Flathead Lake Monster. Lurking in Flathead Lake is said to be a monster that closely resembles the Loch Ness Monster. But hey, I swear every place has their own version of it, so here's Montana's version. For those who don't know, Flathead Lake is situated northeast Montana, just in case you guys want to avoid this place for your next swim. Many visit this lake for its unprecedented beauty, but since 1889, there's been reports coming in the boatloads about this creature. It's described as a very large eel-like creature that moves around like a snake and is as long as 40 feet. Many say its head is shaped like a bowling ball with multiple humps on its back. No wonder people think this is the Loch Ness Monster. It all started in 1889 when James C. Kerr was making rounds across the lake when he and his passengers discovered this creature. They described it as a whale-like from its sheer size alone. Ever since, there's been hundreds of sightings, but who really knows what lies underneath the depths of this lake? At number 7 spot, we have the Alberta Bear Theater. Located in Billings, Montana as well, is the famous Alberta Bear Theater. The theater was originally named the Fox Theater, but in 1987, the theater was renamed the Alberta Bear Theater in honor of his daughter, Alberta. And this 1,400-seat theater was like any other. It was beautiful on the inside, which housed many professional touring companies and various performing artists. However, most visitors and workers claim to see the same two spirits lurking inside of the theater. This includes one male entity and one female. The male is described as wanting to be noticed, out of sorts, and very possessive, while the female is described as being very benign and very friendly. So let's talk about the guy. It's said that he is the spirit of a past employee who took his own life at the theater, which keeps him there trapped for eternity. So if you guys are looking to come to this theater, be on the lookout for these two. At number 6 spot, we have the Garnet Ghost Town in Coloma. Coloma, Montana is known as the Mystery Camp and is a ghost town located a few miles north of the better known Garnet Ghost Town on the Garnet-Back County Byway. Very little is known about the Coloma settlement other than records indicating that it began in 1893 and experienced high gold mining activity starting in 1896. But by the 1940s, the mines had completely run out and the boom went bust. Eventually, the place would be emptied out and be left abandoned, and this is where many locals claim that the spirits ended up taking over the place. One state historian claims that once the sun sets in Garnet, the spirits of the town historic's residents come alive. Ellen Baumler, the Montana Historical Society's resident ghost whisperer and author, wrote, quote, "At midnight, people have heard ghostly fingers striking piano keys with the music floating across the empty buildings." She continued saying, quote, "Especially during the winter months, visitors see visions and hear unearthly noises. They cause no trouble, and anyone who visits the deserted town in the dead of winter should be prepared to meet them. They hide in the shadows, laugh in the wind, and come out when you least expect them." Right in the hump of our list, we have Bear Canyon. Mashed in between Chestnut Mountain and Mount Ellis is a beautiful stretch of land known as Bear Canyon. It's best known for its scenic hiking trail and is one of the most popular sites in the Bozeman area. And as we all know, a place that is beautiful on the outside is usually hiding something very dark on the inside. According to the Bozeman Paranormal Society, Bear Canyon is a place for spirits and not for humans. Sightings of the paranormal have been recorded since the late 1800s, which is ever since we started to settle inside of that piece of land. Many people have reported seeing a little girl who attempts to lead them off of the trail and into the woods. The little girl targets women, and for those who follow this girl, they will find themselves lost in the middle of the canyon. Others claim to have seen a strange mist on Bear Canyon Road, and many have gone missing when they enter inside of this strange mist. Number 4, Moss Mansion. Built in 1903, this red brick mansion was a turn-of-the-century home. It was 3 stories tall with 28 different rooms inside. The mansion was built for the Moss family, who treated it like their pride and their joy. Eventually, they would have around 6 children and 3 servants occupying the home. Years went by and all was good, until they suffered their first devastating loss. Just 5 years after the house was built, the youngest child named Virginia passed away while she was only 6 years old. Then 40 years later, in 1947, the dad, Preston B. Moss, passed away from a heart attack. Then soon after followed the wife, who passed away from a cerebral hemorrhage. Then 30 years later, another one of the sons named Melville passed away in 1984. This family ended up inhabiting the home from 1903 all the way until 1984. So best believe their deaths in the home have some sort of effect. The mansion has now been turned into a museum, and many visitors report various paranormal activity. Some include a ghostly female voice singing in the billiards room, and many staff members report a cool wind that goes up and around their bodies as they walk through the halls of the mansion. At number 3, we have Bannock Ghost Town. When gold was discovered along Grasshopper Creek in Bannock, Montana, the town went from a ghost town to a blooming community. Following the economic growth, a man named Henry Plummer became the sheriff of the town and the leader of a gang known as the Innocents. Plummer's gang is linked to over 100 murders and robberies, and during his brief time as sheriff, Plummer erected the Bannock Gallows, only to be hanged from them himself after being apprehended by a group of vigilantes. Bannock State Park still has the gallows, but many people who have visited claim that there's too much negative energy and supernatural activity in that specific area. Many claim to even see the spirit of Henry Plummer himself, as he's said to be still pleading for his life. At number 2 spot, we have Little Bighorn Battlefield. The Battle of Little Bighorn occurred on 1876 in the grassy plains of Bighorn River Valley and bluffs that exist around and along the Bighorn River. This was where General Custer and his men were brutally and completely defeated by the Sioux and Cheyenne warriors led by Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull. So best believe a place like this has a few restless spirits. I mean, every battlefield has one. You guys should know this. Visitors and employees have reported strange noises and even seeing full-fledged apparitions of soldiers after dark. Now, near the battlefield cemetery is where the most activity is said to happen. Many visitors claim to have been consumed by the feeling of deep sorrow and loss when they walk the cemetery grounds. And the stone house, which was built in 1894 for the cemetery's caretakers, is home to some of the most terrifying ghost stories. Some include lights aggressively flickering on and off until you leave the home, and others report seeing soldiers with missing limbs such as missing heads or legs, indicating some of the injuries they went through during the war. At number 1 spot, we have Dude Rancher Lodge. Built in 1940 by Annabelle and Percival Goen, the Dude Rancher Lodge was originally constructed using salvaged bricks from the old St. Vincent's Hospital. The couple ran the hotel together until 1962, where Percival passed away after a car accident. Annabelle continued to run the hotel on her own, though slowly her health began to decline. She lived in an apartment at the hotel and was cared for by her dedicated staff until eventually she was moved to a nursing home. Then on February 2nd, 1983, Annabelle passed away. Since her passing, this lodge has had too many supernatural activities to count. This includes televisions turning on and off while the housekeepers are cleaning the room, knocking on the doors when no one is on the other side, the sound of children running in the halls with no children being present, and a mysterious female voice was even caught on audio tape in the basement of the hotel. If you ever wanted to stay here, then try to avoid rooms 223, 224, and especially 226, which is said to be Annabelle's grandson's room, who took his own life in that room. At number 10 spot, Pfister Hotel. In the heart of Milwaukee, Wisconsin is the infamous and luxurious Pfister Hotel. When it opened up in 1893, it was unlike any other hotel at the time. It had features such as electricity, fireproofing, and thermostat controls, which was almost unheard of at the time. It's been open for over 130 years now, and during its time, countless of people have come forward to tell about the terrifying experiences they had inside of this hotel. For example, 2015 NL MVP winner Bryce Harper stayed at the hotel back in 2012. He would go on to tell ESPN that one night he woke up to find that the table in his room had moved to the opposite side and his clothes were folded near it on the ground. The next night he said that he couldn't sleep because all he could hear was the restless spirits. He eventually decided to switch rooms, and after further research, there was an article published on May 1983 claiming that the hotel was built on a private burying ground.
That explains a lot.
At number 9 spot, we have Boy Scout Lane. This isolated rural street in Linwood, Portage County is said to be one of America's most haunted roads. It's only less than a mile long, but it's notorious for the things that happen on this road. The road gets its name, Boy Scout Lane, because this is the location where a troop of Boy Scouts were murdered on their camping trip during the late 1950s. The case never ended up getting solved, but many people had their own theories. Some believe that the murderer was their scoutmaster, while others believed it was the bus driver who drove them to the woods. Regardless of whatever story is true, what is said is that these Boy Scouts haunt the forest around this stretch of road. Some who drive on this road see 4 distinct lights in the distance, which are supposed to resemble the 4 Boy Scouts looking to get through the forest. But if you decide to be brave enough and camp out there, you will most likely hear the sounds of footsteps and breaking branches coming in all sorts of directions in the middle of the night. And if you sleep in your car, you may wake up with childlike handprints on the vehicle. So if you can, try to avoid this street at all costs. At number 8 spot, we have the Rhinelander Hodag. This creature, native to the town of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, is said to have the strength of an ox, the ferocity of a bear, and the cunning of a fox. In basic words, this creature is the ultimate predator. Eugene Gene Shepard, a pioneer and lumber cruiser from Rhinelander, claimed to have captured this terrifying beast on camera in 1896, right before it pounced on him from a white pine log. The most dreadful sight was captured by a camera. A hairy creature 7 feet long and 30 inches tall with threatening tusks, powerful jaws, and sharp claws. However, in this case, it turned out to be a big hoax when a group of scientists came to visit Shepard after he allegedly caught one. Regardless, this creature has carved its name in the town of Rhineland, and if you decide to take a visit to the town, you'll find its logos on the town, school, you name it. At number 7 spot, we have the Bloody Headstone at Riverside Cemetery. Opening in 1870, the Riverside Cemetery is one of the oldest cemeteries in the town of Appleton, Wisconsin. While the graveyard stacked up over the years, there's one gravesite that is significantly different from the others. This is the case of the grave of Kate Blood. In past reports, they would call Kate either a witch, a murderer, or even a victim of murder. However, it was much more different than that. Born in 1851 as Catherine Blood, she lived a short life, only having reached the age of 23 before passing away from tuberculosis in 1874. Now, around Halloween every single year, when it's a full moon, people claim to see blood ooze out of her tombstone. Her tombstone is by the back of the cemetery, which made more people believe further that they tried to hide her for a reason. At number 6 spot, we have the Vampire of Graceland Cemetery. The town of Mineral Point in southwest Wisconsin was terrorized by a vampire for a short period of time. More specifically, these sightings were first reported back in 1981. It was a snowy night in 1981 when police officer John Pepper got calls saying that there was a mysterious figure that looked like a vampire walking around the cemetery. When the officer arrived, he immediately spotted the figure, but supposedly it began to run at incredible speeds to a point when it lost the officer within seconds. After the report was completed, not another vampire would be sighted until 23 years later in 2004. This is when several witnesses claimed that a strange slender man was attacking people by jumping at them from atop trees. The police arrived again only to see the figure run away at supernatural speeds. Then in 2005, a couple was fishing when they spotted a tall, pale, slender man with alleged fangs approaching them. Luckily, they noticed it immediately and pulled out a flashlight to see more clearly, and they claimed that the light started to physically hurt the man, which led more people to believe that it was a vampire. In the hump of our list, we have the Lake Winnebago water monster. In east central Wisconsin lies the shallow freshwater lake Winnebago. Back when the Winnebago tribe inhabited the shores of the lake, they would tell stories of a fish so big it would snatch up entire deer and moose from the edge of the water. And when I mean snatch, I mean it would eat the entire thing whole, including the antlers. It was so feared by the natives that they refused to cross the river no matter what happened. Over the next few years, reports were made, but nothing was as significant when a group of men spotted a dark figure floating near the coastlines. After further inspection, they were sure that they had spotted the monster, claiming it was around 15 to 20 feet long. Some locals claim that the monster is a prehistoric sea serpent that managed to survive through many grand level extinctions. Not much else is known about this creature, and many people to this day refuse to go near this body of water for this reason alone. But considering this lake has a max depth of 20 feet, I don't understand how something so large could fit in there. But that could just be me.
That's impossible!
At number 4, we have Summerwind. Located on the shores of West Bay Lake in Vilas County is the now abandoned mansion Summerwind, formerly known as the Lamont Mansion. Not much remains from this building as it's pretty much destroyed to a pulp, but when the building was still up, it had all sorts of controversy. During their 15-year stay at the home, the Lamont family would report many strange occurrences, but it wasn't until the mid-1930s until they decided to finally move out altogether. This was all because one evening, the basement door decided to spring open with the apparition of a man standing behind that door. As soon as they saw this, Mr. Lamont grabbed his firearm and shot at the figure twice before it just vanished out of thin air. Then in the 1970s, Arnold and Ginger Hinshaw bought the home in hopes to renovate it. Except they would be met with a whole load of issues as well. This included electrical problems, disappearing tools, and windows opening and closing by themselves while people were looking out of them. When the renovators decided to quit the project, the two decided to do it on their own, but when they removed the dresser, they noticed a crawl space that contained a real human skull and loads of black hair. At number 3 spot, we have Bloody Bride Bridge. The Bloody Bride Bridge has a wonderful name, doesn't it? Located in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, is said to be the most haunted bridge in the entire state. And I mean, just by reading the name, it's a no-brainer. However, more specifically, this is named Highway 66 Bridge, which doesn't really make a difference. Legend goes that one evening, a bride and a groom were driving over the bridge on their wedding night. When they were crossing, something happened, causing the couple to get into a fatal car accident on that very bridge. The bride ended up passing away, but nobody ever found out what happened to the groom. Ever since that evening, the bride has been reported to still be walking back and forth on the bridge. She's seen wearing the exact clothing she wore when she passed away, and that was a bloody wedding gown. Now people who have gone over this bridge have reported similar strange things. This includes many people believe they had hit a girl on the bridge, but when they walked out to inspect, there was just nothing there. But when they arrive back in their car, they only find her sitting in the back seat. Number 2, we have the Phantom Man of Highway 12. Mostly known for their Devil's Lake State Park, the town of Baraboo, northwest of Madison, has another person that is terrorizing their people. In this town is a stretch of road known as Highway 12. This is a place many say not to go near because it's the most haunted road in Wisconsin. The majority of drivers claim to see a man walking on the side of the road wearing only a green jacket and worn out jeans. However, when they pass him and continue to drive, they notice they spot the same man miles out as if he had beaten the car in speed. Then when they pass him again, it's as if he keeps transporting ahead of them. They say he keeps appearing in front of you because he's just waiting for you to pick him up. But I wouldn't recommend stopping because no one has ever lived the tale to say what happens when you decide to pick up this phantom hitchhiker. All the way at a number 1 spot, we have the Wood County Insane Asylum. If you decide to travel up the middle of Wisconsin, chances are you will enter the small town of Marshfield. This was a place that had the Wood County Asylum, which is considered by many to be a hellhole of a place. When the asylum was completed in 1911, the entire building could hold 250 patients and 19 staff. However, this would be far from a rehabilitation place because many of the patients in this asylum would only get worse the more time they spent there. Many patients didn't get the help they needed, so many of them took their own lives inside of this property. And this type of insanity even drove some of the staff to take their own lives. Now, the supernatural didn't start after the place closed down. It was happening since the opening. Apparitions of former patients and staff were seen both on the grounds and in the main building while the hospital was running. According to one tale, one guy even claimed to have seen the devil's face in the boiler room but left without coming back. Now the area is an attraction spot for ghost hunters because there's a very good chance you will encounter something if you decide to take a visit. At number 10 spot, we have the Palmer House Hotel. In Sauk Center, Minnesota lies the Palmer House Hotel. This hotel stands on the grounds of the city's first hotel named the Sauk Center Hotel, which ended up burning down in June 1900. When the Palmer House was built the next year in 1901 by Christina and Ralph Palmer, it served as a shelter for distant travelers and a meeting place for many of the locals of the town. However, every single year there would be more and more reports of strange occurrences happening inside of the hotel. Guests and staff alike would initially notice cold spots associated with the feeling of dread, as well as doors closing on their own, but eventually various people would report disembodied voices and tugs from the ghost of a little boy seen running in the hallways. This place was investigated by American paranormal television series The Dead Files, and during the investigation, psychic medium Amy Allen confronted a dark presence attempting to take control of her physical being. The room with the most activity is said to be room 22, where this one lady says that she made contact with a ghost child named Thomas, but you can book any other rooms if you don't want to encounter a ghost. Your choice. At a number 9 spot, we have the Kensington Runestone. This slab of stone looking like straight out of the Bible was allegedly found somewhere in central Minnesota during 1898. It was found by Olaf Oman, who was a Swedish archaeologist who found it after removing a tree in his farm. The stone had Viking runes, and one of the texts read the year 1362, which ultimately suggested that Scandinavians arrived in North America 130 years before Christopher Columbus did in 1492. The text talks about a journey to discover the Vinland, which is considered to be North America, and considering it was found in Minnesota, it seems like they completed their task. So is this finally solid evidence to suggest that someone discovered America before Columbus? Well, not really. Many people believe this is a great big hoax, especially considering the fact that the family who discovered it had a book about runic scripts. And when more research was done, the language used inside of the stone was pretty modern. However, if this was true, this would be very groundbreaking news. At number 8 spot, we have Dead Man's Trail. The small town of Thief River Falls in northern Minnesota is known for two major rivers, the Red Lake and the Thief. These two rivers meet up within the town, and during the early years, it affected a lot of the development within the town. Many native tribes would battle for the land, with eventually the Ojibwa coming out on top and forcing the Dakota tribe out of the area. After years of conflict, this town eventually started to have more reports of the supernatural, with the most being reported during a hike in the Dead Man Trail trail. One story goes that the trail was being used as a hiding spot for a man wanted for murder, while another story talks about a Native American woman who was trying to escape from people chasing her. She ran as fast as she could, but her newborn baby would just slow her down, causing her to hide the baby beside the river. When she went back to get the infant, she discovered it had been carried away from the river. Hikers have reported witnessing her ghostly apparition, hunting for her infant to this day. At number 7 spot, we have the Mounds Theater. Built in 1922, this theater was once used as a venue for live entertainment and silent movies. While it had many good moments, there are many accidents inside of the theater. However, there are no reported deaths inside. Eventually, it would get closed down in 1967, then reopened once again in 2001. This little mix of accidents with abandonment is the perfect recipe for ghosts to live in, and this is the case made by many staff and visitors of the theater. Late night workers and janitors have reported being physically grabbed by a ghost, and others report a ghost named Red who throws things at women, and also a young girl has been reported wearing a pink dress bouncing a ball on stage when no one else is around. At number 6 spot, we have the Lake Pepin Serpent. Here comes another iteration of the Loch Ness Monster that lurks to depths below the US. Introducing the Pepe Monster, or PP Monster, whatever floats your boat, but I guarantee this beast won't. As it's mentioned from the name, this beast is located in Lake Pepin, which is basically the border between the states of Wisconsin and Minnesota. This monster became more popular in the media after businessman Larry Nielsen offered a $50,000 reward for finding this creature. After years, no one has had solid evidence of the creature. But Larry himself is convinced it exists out there and only wants to pay the money to see the creature one last time again. This is because 11 years ago, before he put the bounty out, he spotted a quote 200 feet long and 2 feet high creature going upstream. In the hump of our list, we have the Wendigo. This devil of a creature is a well-known one to many, but many don't know that the first original sightings of the Wendigo happened in the state of Minnesota. Wendigos are said to be as tall as 15 feet and very slender-like. However, don't be deceived, because they are said to be very strong monsters that have a never-ending desire to eat and kill humans. The legend states that a person can become a Wendigo if they decide to take part in cannibalism or any other heinous acts of humanity. These bad deeds essentially turn you into this monster, and this creature can possess you and even turn you into one itself if the person is greedy or weak enough. There are multiple myths talking about what Wendigos look like, but majority of them describe them to look like an animal but very tall, with a skull as a head, long legs, and their whole body covered in hair and drenched in blood. They are also said to be very fast and have super hearing with an amazing sense of smell, and in some cases they are said to walk on water, but they're not Jesus, remember. So be very cautious next time you try to camp in the forests of Minnesota. At number 4 spot, we have Crazy Annie's Bridge. 95 miles out of Rochester, Minnesota is a bridge known as Crazy Annie's Bridge, and it's also said to be one of the most haunted bridges in all of America. According to hauntedhoville.com, this bridge is located in Henderson, Minnesota on 270th Street, just in case you guys want to take a quick visit. But I guarantee that's probably not the best idea. This bridge in particular is said to be haunted by a mother named Annie, who was reportedly from the early 1900s. Story goes that Annie lived in the area during the time of World War I. She fell in love with a man and started a family with 3 kids. But eventually the man would end up going overseas to fight in the war. And unfortunately, after months, the man would never end up returning. This is when the woman would go insane and eventually take her 3 children and drown them in this nearby bridge. And ever since, it's said that you can hear the cries of all 3 children and even the mother on the bridge if you decide to go on it in the middle of the night. Number 3, Hibbing High School. Hibbing High in Minnesota is not your typical average school building. Here, the staircases are marble, the railings are brass, and the art walls hold the whole almost medieval design together. The auditorium was modeled after the Capitol Theater, which is a sight in and itself. And when Bob Dylan was still Robert Zimmerman and a student at Hibbing High, he performed on the auditorium stage during a talent show. But even with star performers and a stunning design, it's a lone seat inside of the auditorium that attracts the most attention from everyone. The story goes that the first stage manager named Bill was employed at the school from 1927 to the late 1960s when he passed away after a chandelier fell on his head. Rumors soon arose that Bill really never left his favorite seat in the theater named J47. In the early 90s, Chuck Perry, who at the point had been stage manager since 1979, took a series of photographs of the auditorium after a woman reported feeling a cold chill as soon as she walked around J47 row. And lo and behold, one of the photographs taken with the Polaroid camera showed a man sitting in J47 wearing formal clothes and a top hat. and you could reportedly see right through him. So is this ghost? Who knows? At number 2 spot, we have the Hairy Man of Vergas Trail. In west central Minnesota, in a small town named Vergas, is the tale of the Hairy Man legend. And no, we're not talking about some random dad who happened to have a little too much hair on their back. This legend has existed in the region for the past 6 decades, and that's only because the reports are not done happening, and every single year it seems like there's a new experience with the Hairy Man of Vergas Trail. The man is described as being 8 feet tall, having long hair, smelling like complete garbage, and always walking barefoot. In other words, you would probably think this guy was a more civilized Bigfoot than anything else. Many believed he was just an old homeless man living in the woods and didn't want anyone near his land. However, the Hairy Man gained more notoriety after a man named Ken Zitzaw returned back from driving in the woods with dents in his car hood. He claimed it was the Hairy Man. Others have reported other attacks regarding the Hairy Man, but in the end, it's not confirmed if he really exists or not, or if he's just a figment of our imagination. At number 1 spot, we have the Glen Sheen Mansion. Minnesota's most notorious killing occurred at the Glen Sheen Mansion in Duluth. Elizabeth Condon, the heiress who inherited the home, was murdered in her bed in 1977. The body of her nurse was discovered on the Great Staircase, and the home, which is now held by the University of Minnesota Duluth, is said to be the most haunted in the state. After hours, employees have heard screaming, and some claim to see a white lady dressed in really dark clothing wandering throughout the entire mansion.